Good morning, Mr. Ngeny Biwott. This is Sam Gitukwen Zinzi Kibiko on Citizen TV, and we want to talk to you about the incident that happened yesterday. And first of all, we would want to understand, when an air accident happens, what could go so wrong leading to a situation like we have now with Ethiopian Airlines?
Good morning. An accident is an accident, as it's called. What would go wrong in a normal operation, to the extent that an accident would occur, is occasioned by the fact that a situation totally abnormal and totally beyond the resources available to those who are managing the flight. And that is a very wide spectrum of things that would go wrong, from technical to basically mostly technical, environmental, or in fact human. And in this case, I think and I suspect that would be the case also for the Ethiopian.
Well, every flight seems to have what we call a black box, and perhaps even be able to tell us more about this. But what do we expect? And just generally speaking, what data are we supposed to get from data from our flight recorders? What does that data tell us?
There are two black boxes, as we used to call them. They're really not black. There is the flight data recorders, and there is the cockpit voice recorders. And those recorders have parameters that goes way into thousands of recordings on several units of management of the flight, particularly the flight data recorder. And the voice recorder would record, of course, the voice of individuals and any other sound that might emanate from anything, including even a package of say, a device or a part, or any noise that is generated from any source. Those sounds and those recordings are, in my view, totally adequate for accident investigators to comb through what might have gone wrong and come up with a conclusion as to the possible causation of the accident.
Right, and Mr. Biwott, we hear of a situation where the pilot of this plane had complained of situations that he was facing and gotten leave to turn back, but he wasn't able to. Just explain to us what such a situation would be, and even looking at that, what are the possibilities of survival in such a situation?
Assuming what you're saying is correct, and of course it is pretty normal for well-trained crew to assess a situation in any phase of flight and request for the positions or the area to, or the action to take. For example, return to the airport, which is of course got all the facilities, rescue and other safety support systems. And in this case, if that was what he did, of course, that would be perfectly correct. The situation that would compel him to, or her to make that request, is that assessment of the crisis pertaining to that flight was sufficient enough to come back.
Right.
And again, they are trained to do that. And then you ask what would result in such a drastic thing. Okay, I understand the flight didn't reach the runway, didn't run as was expected by the crew, which means now the situation was deteriorating at a faster rate than the time was available for that crew to manage it.
Well, this is the second plane in 6 months that belongs to Boeing. In your own expertise, what are the possible repercussions that you'd want to see being taken for Boeing?
Very difficult as an accident investigator for a long time myself to make a sweeping conclusion. Boeing, to start with, let's go back to way into 1930s. I've had some fairly commendable safety record. Of course, there have been a lot of accidents all over the world, and I'm almost aware of all of them. Of course, there is a talk that the variant of a certain type of aircraft seems to have a kind of a trend lately, but again, that cannot be concluded short of a total investigation, which is confirmed by so many units of specialists from design, from engineering, from operation, from those guys who do certification. It's a little bit too early at this stage to make a conclusion.
And Mr. Biwott, so this flight went down 6 minutes after takeoff, and one would wonder, just 6 minutes, it might mean maybe there was a technical challenge. Is it a possibility that there are issues that may not have been seen? And as you look into the investigations, how soon should you expect a report?
6 minutes in flying is, particularly after takeoff, and is really very little time. You're still in the climb mode. So many activities the crew are involved in the cockpit, managing the aircraft in flight. And requesting to come back, therefore, means another maybe 2.5 minutes going out or 3, and then 2.5 minutes to come back. That would be very, very, very tight challenge in my view from experience. And what did you say, the last part of your question?
I was asking when these investigations are being carried out, how soon
how long it would take?
Yes.
Yes. Again, it could be as quickly as, say, something like 45 to 60 days. It can take 2 to 3 years, depending exactly on the complication. And if I just give you a quick example of, I think, a Transworld, the accident that occurred out of was it New York, a flight coming towards crossing the Atlantic where it exploded.
Yes.
And ultimately it was a fuel tank, but it took about 2 years for all experts to agree that that was the case. So it depends on what is being found.
Right. And just on top of that, just to take it from where my colleague has mentioned, 6 minutes, one would think that the rescue operation would have been much faster given that the flight was not in the middle of the sea. It's still within the capital. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings towards the rescue response?
Rescue response, I really don't have any details as to really what happened in this particular case. What I am aware of, and the information that I received myself, is we had the first accident bulletin, number 1, coming almost within 1.5 hours, or just coming to 2 hours of the time the accident occurred. Assuming that is an indicator of the response, and then I would think the response could have been fairly good. What really did happen on the ground, of course, in terms of the rescue vehicles and everything else, I do not know. I don't know the terrain. I'm sure there were some guys on the ground who might give us some better information on that. But from all the commercial news, indications are that at least the airline was able to talk to the world within 2.2 hours of the accident, which is really commendable in this case.
All right, Mr. Biwott, there's a question here from the Member of Parliament for Makueni, Dan Manzo.
Yes, I would like to ask you about the insurance and of the plane itself and the victims, and considering that they come from different nationalities, what is used to make sure that these people are sufficiently compensated, and also the government of Ethiopia is compensated another plane?
That I wouldn't be able to tell. I think the airlines themselves are in a better position, but I can only state the point of principle in all airlines. They actually do have a fairly comprehensive accident insurance, and that insurance anticipates a situation like this, even worse, where the accident involved killing people on the ground, and all the search and rescue is done in the sea, and there is a lot of expense that is going to be incurred. My understanding from my days in that industry was that the insurance is pretty comprehensive, and it will take care of all situations that would arise. I doubt if anything has changed so far.
And finally, Mr. Biwott, every time you're flying, you'll be given instructions on safety, on what you need to do. Should there be an incident inside the plane, there are gas masks that you'll be asked to wear, there are reflectors that you'll be asked to wear. What, in your experience, are the chances of surviving such a tragedy from up there falling down?
There are two things that determine survivability in any crash. One is what the engineers call the G-force, the impact itself, as you hit whatever the object or water. And that, depending on the G-force, if the G-force really goes way in excess of 20 or to 40, I think survivability is almost nil and almost impossible. There are other accidents which, of course, the G4 is less, and for example, landing in the water. You remember the one in the US, and then of course recently elsewhere, and where the crew managed just to land the aeroplane, and almost people walk out of would have been total disaster. So the safety instruction in an aircraft always are things that need to be paid a lot of attention. They really work when situation permits. And of course, if you have a total impact, you hit a mountain, the chances are almost nil.